Hello.
Why, hello there.
Can you hear me?
I can. How are
What's up,
you?
good looking? Man, long time no see. I didn't just see you like 20 seconds ago downstairs.
No, a whole 20 seconds ago. I was going to say, what you got cooking? Good looking.
Ooh, look at you. The mom jokes and the puns are already starting.
Oh, well, the thing is I already used my Hannah Baker joke last week, so I have to like kind of rethink each week as to how I can, top that because I mean,
Yeah,
that was the pinnacle of
because you
perfection
can't say
in
live and in
literature.
stereo to start off every single stereo. I mean, I think even the
You know
first
what
one was
though?
kind of pushing it. It was a little
No,
cheese, but you can get
I
away with
think
it
it.
once.
No, I think it might be my thing, babe. Live and in stereo.
It's
Live
a
and on
good thing if
stereo.
somebody else is saying is what you're saying.
Sassy boy. Gosh, you think my jokes are terrible.
No, your jokes are great. They're just really bad, which is why they're fighting.
Okay, deal. I will work on my jokes. You, on the other hand, have a plethora of dad jokes like, in your back pockets always.
Oh, I got all the dad jokes. I was pretty stoked the day that we got two puppies because I'm not like an official dad, but I'm a puppy dad now, so I feel like I can get away with even more of the dad jokes, which is great. But hello, everybody that's tuning in. Welcome to part two of our relationship advice series. I guess this one is finding Mr. and Mrs. Right. So last week we kind of did just general relationship advice. We had some really great questions from you guys and kind of talked about our specific personal relationship and how that's kind of worked out, and what worked or didn't work with us, and a lot of different topics like fighting, X, Y, and Z. You can go back and listen to that one if you want to. But one of the big things that I think kept coming up was just, it's hard when you're already in a relationship, kind of navigating everything just to begin with. But I think the thing that sets you up for the most success and the least amount of
Mm-hmm.
failure is looking for the right person to begin with. I mean, there's a lot to be said for helping out and figuring it out when you're already in that relationship and you want to make it work. But I think the way to make that the best and to make it the easiest on yourself, and it's never going to be easy, it's always going to be hard, but to make it at least the easiest is to focus on finding the right type of person. And so that's kind of what we wanted to talk about this week.
Yeah, sorry, actually started going through a little bit of questions, but Jerry, yeah, you hit
We
the nail on the head. We actually already have some good questions if we want to answer the first three, maybe, and then we can
Ooh,
kind of dive into really what we're wanting to key in on.
sweet. Yeah, let's go for it.
So, how do you know if a guy likes you? Because I've been texting this guy for like a week now.
Great question. I mean,
It's a good
obviously,
question.
disclaimer.
Wait, Jer, let me jump in real quick because whoever that user was, I was very not so good at realizing in my adolescence, along with in my adulthood. Funny side story. When Jeremy first asked me out, I didn't quite know he asked me out. So I feel that question so much because I really struggled. Jeremy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to differences in personalities, especially on it's not every size fits all, and there's always the exception to the rule for sure. But between especially guys and girls, I think for me, like even just me specifically, I am fairly intentional with. I feel like I'd like to think at least when I
Mm-hmm.
like someone and am trying to get to know them. You just obviously for me, I spend a lot of time with them as much as possible. I try to get to know them, and then I think it's kind of there's little cues too. I think especially for you, you're as saying as a guy, how do you know if he likes you? I mean, ultimately, if he's choosing to spend a lot of time with you, that's probably a good indication. If he's
What
choosing to
I
spend time with you, I think over other things, that's usually a good indication. And I feel like he'll always try to find a way to kind of find you in the room, if that makes sense. If there's a
for sure.
group of people, he's gonna find his
And
way to to you.
yeah, and with that too, I think like in regards to social cues that you were bringing up, I feel like one big indicator or just something that kind of comes up is when another person shows interest in something. Like I guess, for example, in our relationship, you know, you asked a lot about ballet. Not that you quite cared about ballet, but because it was something I was passionate about, you then took it
Totally.
upon yourself to learn. And I think the same thing goes on your front with acting. I started to, you know, get to know some of the shows he was on, so I could understand what he was talking about. So I think within trying to figure out if, you know, he or she likes you, picking up on those social cues of like, are they actually being attentive to the things I enjoy? Have they brought up certain questions, or different conversation pieces that, you know, I tend to love? And I think those little intentional moments, and Jared said the word intentional, really, I think, allows you to realize, you know, if someone does or does not like you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think those things are the things that make it the most obvious. I mean, some guys, I would say, maybe don't want to come out and just be like, "Hey, I like you. I want to date you." Like that's not something that happens that commonly. I would think just because, you know, I mean, guys are kind of dorks. At least I definitely am. You know, I'm not the most smooth with any of that, and so for me, I was like, well, it's not super romantic to be like, hey, let's go on a date. Let's specifically go on a date that's kind of a romantic date because I want to be your boyfriend in the future. Like, that's just not a smooth way to go about saying anything. You know, I wasn't going to do that. And so I don't think you're usually going to have someone flat out come out and say that. But me personally, at least, I try to make it pretty clear when I was being intentional with Carolyn, even after, you know, the first, I think not even 2 dates. After that, I was very upfront and was like, hey, I really like you. I like X, Y, and Z. I think we had a lot of, you know, great times together. And I think we get along well and we have similar values. And so I want to pursue a relationship with you. And so I was pretty upfront with that and clear about it upfront. Granted, most guys are not going to be that way. But I think some of it too is just that kind of awkwardness of, you know, no matter what, there's your side of it where you're thinking like, oh, does he like me? But I guarantee there's a certain amount of that on the other side where he's still trying to figure out like, is this worth my time? Does this person like me? So I would say you got to just try and figure out those social cues. Like Carolyn said, if they're taking an interest in the things that you do and they're taking an interest in your life in, you know, areas that they don't even know anything about, just to keep the conversation going, that's usually a pretty good indicator that they like you. And we're gonna go to the next question, Ms. Carolyn.
Yes, you got it, sir.
What's the quality that Mrs. or Mr. Right has to have to be the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with?
I mean, first and foremost, their last name has to be Right, Right. You know.
It's not their last name isn't literally right. It doesn't work.
Okay, that was Jared. That should have been your joke. But character qualities. This is so important. And it is going to depend on your, I guess, your personality too. I think ultimately though, like, you need someone in your life that can make you laugh. And I think being able to have that in a partner type relationship is so important. And I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but laughter is literally medicine. And with life being so challenging at times, having someone that can make you laugh, you know, whether it's my dry sarcasm or Jeremy's dad jokes, the element of being able to laugh with one another is what I find super duper important. And there's a ton of other qualities. I think with morals and values too, I think making sure that things align with your partner is so important, just because you want to be on the same page with things. You know, things evolve as time goes on, and your, you know, thought process and things can evolve with it. But ultimately, when kids and family are brought into a picture, being on the same page as parents, I think, is so incredibly important.
100%. And I think it's because literally just as people, even if, and me and Carolyn have, you know, the same morals and values and those important kind of, let's call them the groundwork, you know, the foundation of the house, if you will. We are similar on all of those things, which are the very important things in your life. But no matter who you are, even if your foundation is the same, you're probably going to be pretty different in just personality quirks, let's call them. You know, like whether you're a clean person or a not clean person, whether you're tidy or not, whether you prefer, you know, going and hiking on the regular, or if you prefer sitting at home and watching Netflix more so. Like there's a lot of other different personality quirks that people are going to have no matter what. So with all of those, you want to, you know, give yourself the least amount of kind of, let's say, tension when it comes to those important foundational things. So at least you're on the same page with those. And then you can kind of enjoy having the differences in personality and the differences in quirks that you'll grow to love about your person. Because ultimately, sometimes maybe you like someone that's just like you, and that's great. But I think sometimes it's, as long as your foundation's similar, if you have someone that's a lot different than you and just their kind of normal personality, it's kind of fun because you're looking for something that maybe is not you on the regular, and maybe like in me and Carolynn's specific situation, sometimes somebody else can bring something out of you that you didn't realize was there in a good way. Maybe they'll lift you up a little bit. Maybe you can be more goofy around them, or vice versa. Maybe you're kind of loosey-goosey all over the place, and it's nice to have a partner who's a little bit more serious because they can kind of, let's say, tether you to reality a little bit and kind of help you make those serious decisions and when you need to. Really good.
And kind of like to that point / in conjunction / a little bit opposite, I think the sentiment that opposites attract is like one of the most falsest. That's not even a word. One of
falsest. Wow,
it's a new
add
one.
that to your dictionary.
Carolyn added it to Webster's now. But seriously, with but no, okay. In all seriousness, it's just such an incorrect sentiment, because if everything is polar opposite within each other, then how can you actually have character qualities and morals and values that align? I think in regards to like introvert, extrovert, and silly things like that are, just additive elements of a person's character quality, those types of things, of course, can be different, but the more the same you are in certain aspects, like if you both enjoy playing sports or things like that, shared experiences with your partners, I think, is so important. And I guess to backtrack a little bit with what Jeremy's saying, each person allows one another to get outside their comfort zone, but if a person has zero desire to go out of their comfort zone and to try certain things, then the element of opposites attract is terrible. So
I would add to that. I think there's a certain amount of opposites attract that is true in terms of, I think initially opposites do attract in terms of like, oh, that's different than me. Like that's cool. That's interesting. Like I'm not like that at all. I like that in that person. But just because something is, kind of exciting at first, this also just goes into how our brains work a little bit. There's the honeymoon period, which for any relationship usually lasts at maximum like 12 to 18 months. And so
Jeremy's
usually that's where
like a year and a half, but I'm just kidding.
Mine's still there. What are you talking about? We're still in it.
Oh, I like the way you think.
Oh, yeah. But that's just scientifically that is the case. And it's because when a relationship is new, there's that kind of excitement and there's that mystery. You're getting to know the person. You don't know anything about them. And that's fun. It's fun getting to know someone, but also when you first meet them, you're going to have some type of impression. And usually the image and the idea that you have about them at the beginning, which is what pulls you in and you're attracted to, is usually not exactly what the person actually is. And so once you spent that much time together, that's why they call it the honeymoon phase, because once you're done with the kind of exciting dating stage where you're both on your best behavior the whole time, usually because you're excited by the person, you really like them, and it's very romantic. Suddenly, after a while, you stop kind of, I guess, putting in the effort a little bit, and you know them. It's not a mystery anymore. It's very clear who the other person is. And usually that's why in the 12 to 18 month range, a lot of people start breaking up, because it's like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. You're not the person I thought you were. Well, it's usually because the person you thought they were wasn't who they actually were, because you had kind of an image built up in your mind. And so with that, I think opposites do attract in the beginning, but over time, it's going to become very tiresome if you have someone that you're not like in any way, shape, or form, and you don't have similar things that you enjoy doing, because that's the stuff for a long-term relationship that's going to actually propel it. And that's the same with me and Carolyn. We have different personalities for sure, but we have the same foundations, and there's still a lot of things that we enjoy doing together that actually overlap. Like we said last week, like being nerds and playing board games and playing card games. Like we love doing those things, and that's great. You need something like that that's a casual thing you can do on a consistent basis, long term, that keeps you entertained. And I think the other thing about finding Mr. or Mrs. Right, whichever, is being able to enjoy them in the mundane, which is the Netflix and sitting on the couch doing a whole lot of nothing, the same amount as when you're on those kind of fun, let's say honeymoon type excursions, when you're on like a really epic fun date. You want to have someone that you can enjoy equally in both, because long term, the mundane kind of Netflix and chill is basically what's gonna be your average Tuesday or Wednesday night instead of going on the epic dates, basically. So that is something that I think you should always keep in mind when you're looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right, is someone who you can be bored with, ultimately. Someone who can be boring with you and enjoy it.
Oh, I like being bored together.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. We've got some really good ones this week.
Well, my question is, how do you know when it's right?
Oh, that is the question, isn't it?
It is, and I think we'll both be able to speak to this in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Mr. Shada, do you want to take a stab at it first? Because your experience was a lot different than mine was.
Sure. I would say with any answer to this question, you always have to preface it with, to me, there's no way you're going to 100% ever know before you take that step and make this your forever person. There's no way you're going to ever, like, without any doubt, 100% sure that this is your person. For me, you look for the qualities that are the most important. You find someone who, like I said earlier, you enjoy in all the circumstances, everything we just talked about earlier. And then ultimately there just comes a time when, you've hit all of those green lights. There's no red flags. It's going great. And it doesn't mean the person's perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all imperfect people. We all have our issues. But with things that you're wanting and you feel like you can live with, and this is the person you can spend a lot of time with, there just has to be at some point a decision where you go, okay, this is the person. You're never going to have that 100%. No one can tell you, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is it. You just have to look for the right things. And then at some point you just have to responsibly make the active decision to be with that person. So ultimately for us, it was like the day that I married Carolyn, she 100% became Mrs. Right, because I made that decision on our wedding day to be like, nope, I'm choosing you for the rest of our lives. And this is the person because it's the person I've chosen to be with. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of forget. I have a lot of friends like this too, where you go back and forth in the kind of realm of being like, oh, I just don't know. Like, are they or aren't they? And that's why I always say,
like, will they or won't they?
Yeah, like, will they or won't they? I always say, don't even focus on the, like, is this the right person or is it not? Focus on the qualities, focus on the things that you need and want in your person. And if they're hitting all of those and you really love them, and that seems like the person you can spend your life with, then you just have to make that active decision to go for it, or make the active decision to not go for it if they're not matching those things. And if you're being honest long term, you don't think it's going to work.
Jeremy, I can summarize that in 4 words. Love is a choice. And
yes,
it is.
Man.
Ultimately, because there are going to be some very terrible days where, Jeremy forgets to pick up his underwear and I'm very upset, and I pick up his underwear and put it in the hamper and do his laundry and fold his laundry. And
that's a funny example to me, because that's not actually something I do.
I know. Honestly, it was the first thing that came to my mind because I just thought that I needed to do laundry, and I thought about your dirty underwear. Anyways.
Here's a good one that apparently I do. No pun intended. I happen to pick my nose often, so there's a pet peeve of Carolyn's, and when that happens, she is very gracious and forgiving, or has to be, because she's chosen to be.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, it comes to the point of exactly what Jeremy was saying, with, if there are character qualities that you're like, man, I can see myself with this person when I'm gray. I see myself sitting in a rocking chair, just being with this person, and their company still makes me feel loved. And I think picturing yourself in that position, being like, no, I could literally see the person I'm with now sitting next to me for the rest of my life. And I think when you kind of view it through that lens and really realize that it's just the tender moments, and it's just, life is about moments, and if you want to spend those moments with that person, then you have your answer. But I mean, even within our relationship, there are ups and downs. No person is perfect, like Jeremy said, and no relationship is perfect. And it's ultimately about choosing that person every single day. Even if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and even if they leave their underwear on the floor, It's making a conscious choice to be like, no, this is the person I have decided and chosen for the rest of my life. So I'm going to make each day count, basically.
And I think that's a huge thing just in general. This has to do obviously with relationships, but I think it's just in life in general. I think people kind of misconstrue what love ultimately is, in
Absolutely.
that sometimes we kind of treat love and talk about it and act on it as if it's just an emotion, like being happy or being sad.
It's a
But
feeling.
love isn't really an emotion or a feeling. Love it's kind of almost like, I guess the best way to describe it would be like a way of life, if that makes sense. It's an intentional choice. You're choosing to at times do things that maybe don't fully benefit you in the moment, but are for the betterment of that person. And so you're choosing to sacrifice something selfish by giving that to someone else and choosing to love them, even when they're being a total butt, and because you love them, and that's the whole thing. Like any relationship, if you're with someone for any extended period of time, and most definitely if you're going to be with someone for potentially the rest of your life, you are going to absolutely piss them off at times, and vice versa, and you're going to be super annoying. You're going to get into fights. You're going to make them angry, because also the more you get to know someone, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, you know exactly how to get under their skin, and there's going to be times when
Preach it, Jeremy.
whether it be intentional or not, you're just gonna be the number one person who's able to do that. And on top of that, there's always the flip side, isn't there? When you know someone really well, you might be the number one person to get under their skin, but you're also the number one person to bring them back from the brink and to love them and help them and support them and encourage them, more so than anyone else knows how to do, because you see them in, day in and day out on every single type of situation. So that's my 2 cents on it. Just love in general. I think people kind of confuse love with romance or lust, and those are definitely separate things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you answered that one, baby. Let's jump into the question.
So I'm a Christian, and I really hope to find someone who shares my beliefs and values. And when I meet someone who doesn't, I immediately feel like it's a deal breaker. But I don't know if it should be, because it's hard to find people with the same mindset nowadays. So do you think it can work out long term if two people don't share the same values in life?
So, great question.
Good question.
And I'll take a stab at it first, but I do strongly believe that kind of everything that we've been talking about kind of pivots back to this specific question. I think, regardless of what you believe, it is so important on finding someone that aligns with your morals and values, because ultimately, we're talking about finding Mr. and Mrs. Right. We're talking about finding your life partner. And a lot of times with your life partner, you have children, and you build a family together and you create something with someone you love. And what you do is you instill values into your children as well. And so if you disagree on, where you're going to end up, if you disagree on spirituality, I think that definitely runs into such a rough spot with how you're going to raise your children as well. And that just brings up points to, okay, are you really making the wisest choice that knowing, from 10 years from now, you're going to run into this issue with your spouse? So in short, and I know Jeremy can probably add to this, I think it is, top of the list to make sure that, whether you're religious or, whatever you believe, even politics too, making sure you align with those is so important, because it just aids in tough, rough conversations moving forward.
No, I agree. And it's, it's those areas that are always, this is what we were talking about earlier with, the foundation, the groundwork of the home, so to speak, being the most important. It's because it's those areas that ultimately are not things, generally speaking, that are going to change, or at least you have to kind of assume in your head that they potentially and probably won't change for someone over time. So that being said, it doesn't mean there's not the exceptions to the rules. It doesn't mean there's not, find someone and you're in that relationship, or you make that relationship, and maybe, like she said, in the context of being a Christian, maybe you're with someone who's not, and you pursue them over time in life, and maybe they will end up becoming one. That's happened throughout history. That happens. It's definitely, it's not like it doesn't happen, but that's not a guarantee. And we're talking about trying to make the wisest decisions long term, and those things you just kind of have to, I think, with wisdom, assume that it's going to be something that's probably not going to change over time, and try to think about that in terms of the rest of your life, and how that's going to affect, like we say all the time, it's going to affect your specific relationship, because no matter what, if you're disagreeing with someone on faith or politics in general, which are the two big things,
Exactly.
you're gonna have arguments. It's just gonna lead to a lot of differences in opinion. You're gonna have a lot of arguments. You're gonna have a lot of fights that are just solely based off of those, and it's gonna be really, really, really hard on you to not be on a united front with that, just as a couple. And then, like we say, if you end up having kids and you add kids into the mix, then it's not even just we have an argument, we have a difference in opinion. It's huge. Then it's like, okay, well, what do I teach my kids? They see me doing something different. They see mom different. I say this is ultimate and this is true. Your mom says this is ultimate and this is true, or your dad, whatever. And that's just going to be such a point of confusion for them. And it feels like probably at times living in a little bit of a war zone. And that's just not the place you want to be in. And so whatever your belief is, whatever your political standing is, I think ultimately you want to at least air and aim for someone who, and it doesn't have to be every single little issue. We're talking the foundation should be the same in my head. And if you're talking about finding someone you're going to have a great relationship with long term, that is something that, to me, and as Christians, to me is a non-negotiable, because I don't want to have those types of arguments and fights later. And ultimately, it's not even just for me. It is selfishly for me, but it's also for that other person, because you have to know that they're in it 50-50. They're in it just as much as you. So if you know that you're going to have a problem to fight with that later, that means they will as well. And so you want them to be able to also find the person that's right for them. And because of that, I would say personally, wow, hot take. This is a controversial, I guess. Personally, for me, it's a disqualifier. I mean, I think you should just someone with those level of importance. I think they have to match up. That is just me. You can definitely disagree, but that is how I've always thought about it.
I do agree, and I also agreed with your previous statement of it's not impossible for things to change.
Right.
But as you had said before, what we're talking about now is making the wisest decision. And I think ultimately it's creating a healthy environment for you and your partner and for your potential family. So with that being said, yes, I do agree with it being a disqualifier. Let's jump into some of these next questions, because I feel like everything kind of ties together in regards to what we want to tap into. So let's take a listen.
Do you guys have any advice for us to move on from the talking phase?
Oh, I could barely understand. Well, she said.
It was, do we have any advice from moving on from the talking phase? I think this is a great question, and Jeremy is the king of moving on from the talking phase.
I brain farted hard. I know exactly what she's talking about. Okay. Yes. So there's the phase of we're just talking, getting to know each other, seeing what each other's likes, which is, I mean, ultimately, for all intents and purposes, is kind of the, like, in some ways, literal dating phase. Before you're like actually committed to being in a relationship with them in any way, shape, or form, you're just getting to know them, and you're probably going and getting a bite to eat, doing whatever, maybe going to see a movie, that type of stuff. You're just getting to know them and hanging out. I think you probably don't want to stay there a super duper long period of time, because ultimately, I mean, the longer you stay there, the more it's just going to end up becoming, okay, you're in a relationship, but you haven't had the chance to like actually define what that relationship is.
Right. And the thing with a lot of relationships, and I guess specifically kind of our mentality in relationships, it's like, okay, what are the next steps to move forward? Like we as humans innately desire to be with someone. That's how we were wired. I mean, our dogs hump each other. Like,
oh jeez,
procreate, people.
Speaking of, our poor little pupperitos are getting fixed today. Poor guys.
Well, stinky boys. But needless to say, I'm definitely err on being a bit more of an introvert. But innately we're wired to want to be with someone, you know, whether it's in peace and quiet or goofing around. We as people are, you know, herd type animals. And so with that being said, what was the actual question? Oh, to move on from the liking phase.
No, the talking phase, yeah.
Is to be intentional with moving forward with a life partner. And I think Jeremy did such a great job. And he is definitely more of the like super committed relationship type, whereas growing up, I was not. Just because I never thought it was worth my while. And
I'll let you take me out to dinner and pay for it, but don't expect anything in return. That was Carolynn's mentality for a long time. Not when we started dating, I don't think, but before that.
No, but okay. To make me sound a little bit nicer, I was very driven, and my career along with school was what was my driving factor, and I didn't have time for a relationship, nor did I really want one. But I mean, you know, as a young girl, it's like, oh, cool, boys, okay, maybe let's go on a date. Oh, I don't want any commitment because I don't have time for it. And so that was like, I knew that wasn't right, but at the same time, I didn't want a boyfriend. So, fun fact, Jeremy was my first boyfriend. And now he's my first husband. That sounds like I'm gonna have multiple husbands. I'm just kidding. He's my life partner.
Yeah.
I promise we're actually educated and talking about Mr. and Mrs. Right.
Yeah, but I think no, as far as like the talking stage, I mean, like you just said, it's always for the for the intention. What is your goal? And ultimately, I think for us, just groundwork for all of these conversations, we're talking about relationships, obviously, that you are expecting or hoping to be, or looking for to be long-term in nature. So
right.
I mean, if you're looking to date someone casually and you're not really wanting any commitment, blah, 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 I guess this conversation probably is not for you. Right. But if you're talking about an intentional long-term relationship, that's what we're talking about. So you want to stay in the talking phase as short as possible. In what I mean by that is you want to get to know them quite a bit, but then there has to be a point where, you know, going from talking to being in a relationship is less of a commitment for sure than going from being in a relationship to getting engaged and getting married, you know. So there's a lot more time that you can spend in the I'm officially in a, you know, relationship with this person as boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You have a lot of time to really get to know them there, and that's the place where you're really going to get to know them. The just talking phase to me is more so just being like, is this person weird? Do I even like being around them at all? You know, that's kind of what that is. And I think through the just talking phase, you'll suss out a lot of the important things, you know, the foundational things. You'll figure out pretty quickly what their beliefs are on things. Sure. And I think once you know those, and once those are similar, and you kind of just, you know, you don't even have to fully like them yet, but just enjoy being around them, then I think that's when you want to, as quickly as possible, at least define what the relationship is and say, hey, I want this to be serious. I'm not looking just to date around. Like, it doesn't mean we're going to get married by any means, but it means that I'm intentional and wanting to get to know you, to see if you are Mr. or Mrs. Right. And I think anybody who is going to say no to that is someone that you don't want to be with anyway. And if they say yes and they say, hey, that's where I'm at as well, it's a very good indication that at least they're thinking about things in the right way. And I think that's what I want to get across in a lot of this is it's not even always necessarily the person. It's about thinking about relationships in the correct way and going about them in the way that is going to be the least damaging to you, the least damaging to the other person, and the most beneficial. And that doesn't mean that suddenly that relationship is the one that works out.
It's the most beneficial for your future relationship, future partner, future spouse, you know?
Right. Because ultimately, you have to think about terms too, like she just mentioned, which is what I'm getting into as well, is it's not about you even immediately. It's not about the person you're immediately dating or pursuing a relationship with. Because if that person doesn't work out and it's not the right fit, then you're saving yourself a lot of heartache and trouble and baggage later with whoever is the right fit by going about it in an intentional, serious way. And that all seems so unattractive and so like, oh, there's not a lot of fire in that. Like that, I don't like that. You know, I want to go off of the moment, to go off the oceans and the romances. But ultimately, long term, all of those things cease to exist in some way, shape, or form. The immediate romances, if you will. There's a much deeper romance that happens long term when you really fall in love with someone and get to know them. But like the immediate kind of fun parts of it, I mean, you kind of forget about and don't really care too much about X amount of months or years down the road. You know, your relationship changes.
Right. And I think we're making it sound like this drag, but there's so much romance that does go into being intentional with someone.
Totally.
And like, as a little fun side story, I think it was after our second date, Jeremy reaches out. He goes, I want to be intentional and I want to pursue a relationship with you. And I think that was his way of being like, oh, I want to be your boyfriend. But I didn't read it that way. But he had specifically...
how can I be more clear than that?
Okay, we need a poll. The stereo needs some sort of poll option. Does that mean that you're boyfriend and girlfriend? Or does the person specifically need to say? Because to this day, maybe I'd have never actually had a boyfriend in my entire life. I mean, no one's actually ever asked me. So anyways... But
it's not very romantic to be like, you want to be my girlfriend, and vice versa. That means I will be your boyfriend, and we will be dating together as a couple. That's not very romantic to me. That feels like the most nerdy, robotic way to say that question.
Okay. Well, maybe because I know like gentleman has actually asked that, I just maybe need this fantasy for myself. So
fair enough.
To our death do us part. I will not ever have a boyfriend.
You did. What are you talking about?
I'm just kidding. Let's take a stab at this next question.
All right.
Hi Jeremy, hi Carolyn. I'm a really big fan of your relationship and I think you guys are super cute.
Aww.
But my question is, how do you know if a guy likes you through text without actually asking him directly?
This is going to be the question. This is going to be the question of like the millennial Gen Z ever, continuing on, just because everything is so digital now.
I know.
As a side note,
gosh,
like I am the worst texter in the history of the world.
So yeah,
she's I think I have like 400 unread messages, but we'll not get into that now. Needless to say, I think trying to get out of the texting phase is so important. And so parallels into the fact what you're saying of how do you know with someone over text. Over text is so difficult because they're just dry words. Right. Nothing beats the face-to-face or even FaceTime or even phone interactions. I mean, even through stereo right now, you can hear our voice inflections here when we're getting passionate about things. And even that element besides, texting, it just elevates how you can hear and feel their emotions.
Totally.
So tip numero uno is see what you can do to not text. Plan a phone date, or just whether it's you don't want to get that serious, ask for help on, a homework question, or, create some sort of a circumstance where you need the other person's help and, ask for a phone call.
Be flirty.
Jared, do you want to dive into it a little bit further?
No, yeah, I mean, if you like someone and you're trying to get to know them, I mean, you're gonna find reasons to talk to them. Like she said, find little problems that you need their help with. You don't need their help. Make it seem
specifically their help.
Yeah, you don't specifically need their help with it, but you're gonna make it seem like it, and that's how you get to know someone. That's great. 100% do that. But I 100% agree. I don't think that it can be solely based through text. I think the best way to gauge someone's personality is to be in the same room with them and actually have a full conversation. So in times like this, when you're not able to do that, I think at least bare minimum, try to talk to them on the phone, try to do FaceTime, because it's just one step closer to having it be an actual interaction. There's facial expressions that you get to know in someone that you really love or you really don't like. Literally, like you get to know their
like
life.
nose picking.
Exactly. But those are the things that make you actually like the person as a person. I mean, I think a lot of people with enough time and effort can be funny or interesting over text if they're really trying, because you have the time to think about a response or let's be honest, for the people that are flirting and trying to be witty, they'll just look on Google for a funny response to something, and that's no indication of what their actual character is and what their actual personality is like, because you can, mold yourself to be whatever you want through text. But if you're live face to face with someone, or even if you're on FaceTime or a phone call with someone, you really get to know what they're thinking about on a much quicker basis, how they're processing things, how they act, if they're funny, if they're not, if they make you laugh, if they actually make you laugh, not just through saying a witty text or sending a meme they got from someone else, but if they in the spot say something that makes you laugh, or, you know, we're talking about laughter being an important thing. If they're so unfunny that it makes you laugh, which is also just as possible. That is just
Excuse
as great.
me, are you talking about me? I felt like a finger being pointed my way.
I might be talking to my wife right now, but yeah, if they're so not good at comedic timing, sometimes that in and of itself is very, very funny. It can make you laugh, and you fall in love with that. So it's those types of things. I think minimizing texting and maximizing actual, let's say, face-to-face time, or just FaceTime if you can't actually be face-to-face. Right. That is going to be the most important, because that's going to be the closest gauge as to what someone's actually like.
Feeling.
I think for me, I've always treated texting, especially in the terms of serious relationships, as, hey, I'm just seeing if you're available to have an interaction that's a real interaction. And so I'm using text as a way to set up a time or a location, or say, hey, do you want to go to the movie this Friday night? Whatever. As opposed to texting being the whole relationship. It's a tool that you use for your relationship, and it's not the end all be all.
And it's convenient. And I think with that, it's too convenient at times in regards to a relationship where, again, our like keyword of the series, intentional, being intentional, going out of your comfort zone and actually chatting with someone on the phone, you know? So if you're that unengaged and all you care about is texting, then I think there's a little bit more that can be said there in regards to stepping out of what your norm is. So yeah, let's listen. We have like 3 more questions and we only have just a couple minutes. So let's try to zip through these pretty quick.
This question is for Jer. What is your best pickup line to do on Carolyn?
Short and sweet, baby.
Great question. I think the most common one that I'll probably say is man, it's really hot in here, mainly because Carolynn's here. Or you know, I mean, sometimes it's not even a pickup line. I usually just talk about the fact that she's a total smoke show. You know, that's a phrase that I like to use in relation to Carolynn quite a bit. Generally, just think of the most cheesy dad joke type thing possible, and that's what I will use on Carolynn. I don't have smooth pickup lines. I'm not good with it. So I just point out the obvious, and I do it in a simple manner.
Your wife is hot. Better get your AC fixed. That could be
exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem was, even after I got my AC fixed, my wife was still hot. You see, there it is.
There it is. Yeah, good one. Okay, next question.
How do I build the confidence to talk to someone?
Ooh, that's so we're talking about. I mean, obviously, this is a question for everyone, really, because it's hard to kind of dive in and start talking to someone if you don't know them. You know, it's the hardest part about relationships. I guess I'll give my quick thoughts on it, then Carolynn, you can give yours, because they'll probably be very different. And for me, as a guy, you're trying to be respectful, and you don't want to come across, I guess, too strong, for lack of a better word. You know, I think if you're being too jokey and too flirty at times, it can be a little bit of like, whoa, that's too much. Because if the person doesn't like you, then it's just coming across as creepy and weird. So you're trying to, as a guy, I think, suss out if the person likes you or not first. And so I think just, you know, talk about things that are casual. I think it's hard to be confident if you're taking it to such a serious level immediately, or talking about hard subjects immediately. So the best way to get to know someone is just to be casual at first. You don't need to be naming your children. You don't need to be doing all that right from the get-go. You know, you want to get to know them. You want to ultimately try and make them laugh a little bit. You know, if you can.
Yeah. And I think with that too, in regards to, you know, how do you get to talk to someone? If it is someone that, you know, you're interested in or think they're cute, you know, asking around, seeing what their friend group is, and kind of figuring out, not in a stalker way, as to what their interests are, and having, and, you know, bring up those in conversation so that there is something to talk about. So it's not hi, hi, Jeremy. I'm Carolyn. Nice to meet you. And so it's not
Right.
that awkward.
This is some great weather we're having, huh? Like
For sure. It's
it's
a
probably
true
not the
scorcher.
best.
Yeah, and so I think that's one with, getting to know them through their friends a little bit, not in a weird way, but, if they're a football player, learning a little bit about sports and see if you can hold up a conversation and those types of things. But I think
Right.
also shared experiences is always important. So, if I know we're in COVID times and stuff, but if you went to a homecoming rally or, some sort of tailgate thing and you knew that person was there and you stopped or you bumped into them in the hallway and you could then bring up that thing that you knew that you both interacted together with or participated in. And so those little things in regards to shared experiences make easy conversation. So,
Oh, totally.
if you share a chemistry class together, or, things along those lines where trying to figure out within the sphere of things how you can have shared experiences is definitely an easy segue.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the simplest way is, I mean, just talk about stuff that you're going to be decent at. Or, I mean, if you have a hard time talking to people and you have a hard time getting confidence in talking to people, then honestly, in some ways, let them do the talking. Ask them questions and ask them questions and let them go ham. Like ask them something about their personal life, and they'll probably find something that they're interested in or excited about. And a lot of times they'll just kind of open up and and if it's about something they're interested in, they're going to have a lot more things to say and talk about. And then at that point, it's just being a person. I mean, really, just be a human and take an interest in whatever it is they're talking about and try to really get to know it. Not just because you're trying to get to know them romantically, but just in a normal sense. Get to know
I
what
think
they like.
for sure, listening is one of the most beautiful things in any sort of relationship or friendship. Okay, bum bum bum. Last question, baby.
What would you give advice to someone who's kind of, I guess, at the point where you're like, I guess there's no Mrs. Right? At least for me, I feel like, I'm 28, going to turn 29, and like all my friends are married, established, have their families, and I'm like the last single person in the group.
Right.
And I'm feeling like, hey, there's probably not one out there for me. So I guess advice for someone who's kind of, I guess, contemplating staying in there, like, there's no Mr. or Mrs. Right for them.
Yeah,
That's a
I think
great
this
question.
is like basically the question that I wanted to get to, and this is our last question. So I'll jump in first. I mean, as we said before, we as humans are innately relationship driven. So I would never, bestow that upon anyone to be like, oh, I don't think I'm ever going to find that right person. This might be a little bit different than Jeremy, but I firmly believe that there's not just simply one person for someone. It goes back to the love is a choice type situation where, a lot of different people can align morals and values wise, character qualities, and it's just deciding who you want for the rest of your life. With that, I guess, in mind, it is so important as to where you're looking for your significant other.
Right.
And this goes back to the alignment of morals and values. And, if you're that type of person that, goes to the bar all the time and you're hoping to find your absolute perfect dream spouse, dream partner, whether it's a girl or a guy or what have you, is that where you picture your person coming from? Or is it, chess club or I'm a big card person, so let's say you're into cards and you have a card group, like trying to figure that. Or if you are religious, is it investing in a church community? Figuring it out, different communities is so important too. And the thing is if you're struggling to find that person within the community you're in, maybe jump out of your comfort zone a little bit and see if you can find another group to be associated with that you still find interest in. I think ultimately with this question in particular, it's, okay, this is who I see myself with, or the type of person that I see myself with. And
Right.
It's figuring out and, having a little bit of wisdom there as to, okay, where ultimately can I find them? And if they're a beach bum, then, spend time at the beach. But I think when it comes down to those things, it's really figuring out, okay, how can I put myself in certain positions where I'm going to have things in common with people, and I know that the person that I'm going to be with or that I desire to be with is more or less going to find themselves in these situations. And this kind of parallels a little bit into jumping out of your comfort zone. One of our friends recently just, went through a breakup, and she was kind of stuck in her community, had great friends and things, but knew that in the group she was in, she is not finding her person. There was just no options. And she took it upon herself to go and reach different communities, plug into different small groups, and really put herself out there to meet new people. And again, the places that she went all aligned with her morals and values. And so that is something that I stress so much to actually one of my brothers, is where are you looking? Because that ultimately will define who you're going to find.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up there. I'll add a very small thing, but I think I agree with pretty much all of that. Yeah, like you said, there's not really, I don't think in my mind, like a one person for everyone type thing. I don't really believe in the whole like, oh, this is my soulmate, and then because in that context it's like, oh, someone else has my soulmate, I'm never going to be happy now, someone else already took them, like I don't think that's the case. I think, like we're saying, I think there's a lot of people out there. I think like it's kind of whenever someone is like, there's only one person for me out there and I'm going to find them someday, it's like, no, there's a lot of awesome people, and you just have to find them. I mean, if it was easy, then everyone would do it, kind of type thing, where it's like there's a lot of great people, and sometimes there's a lot of great people who I think get overlooked because maybe not the most outgoing at first or X, Y, and Z, but it's the people that once you get to know, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a diamond in the rough. This person's amazing. Like we have so many things in common. I really enjoy being around them, and this is the person I want to, someone, or maybe the person or someone that's like the person that I want to be with at least. And so, like you said, I think that's just my 2 cents on the fact that I do think you can find someone if you're really looking, and there's maybe a lot of places that people overlook at times. But ultimately, I agree. Just you want to find yourself in a community where there's going to be people that you can actually pursue. If there's no one that's currently in the community you're in, then doesn't mean you have to leave that community. It just means that maybe you need to put another one in. Maybe you need to find and add to it, and at least put yourself in places where you're going to be meeting new people or finding new people and actually having the potential. It's like if your pool is 7 people who you don't want to be with any of them, then you need to get out of the pool.
Or stay in the pool, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, or stay in the pool and occasionally go to a different hot tub. That's a weird.
I love this analogy.
But yeah, I mean, you want to add to it and give yourself the most statistical. That sounds so unromantic, but ultimately the most statistical chance of finding someone by actually finding other groups and other communities where there's going to be people who you haven't met before. If you're in the scenario, like he was saying, where you feel like everyone in your group is already coupled up, or there's no one there that you would want to be with, and you just have to put yourself in a place where you're going to find someone that you would want to be with. And that is the hardest thing. It takes the most, courage, and it's the most like, awkward, and is this going to work? But you know what? If you don't try, you can't succeed. And the worst
that can happen, try again. Isn't that something? Yeah. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. That should be a mantra or something.
It's like every single time you fail, or every single time something doesn't work out, at least it's just experience and practice for the time when it will. So try and think of it like that. Even if something doesn't work out with someone, it's like, okay, well, that's not the person. Great. So let me X that one off the list. And look somewhere else.
And learn through experiences too.
100%. Well, I think that pretty much does it for today. Thank you for all your awesome questions. And I think we will see you guys next week. Next Tuesday? We're back here again at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. Is that our weekly schedule?
Yeah, I was going to say back at it again with the white vans. Wasn't that some like viral something?
Yeah, back at it again with the white vans. Damn, Daniel, back at it again with the white vans.
Back at it again with the marriage advice or the relationship advice. Run. It has been an absolute joy and such a privilege. No, actually, it's been super fun. Your questions are super awesome. Thank you guys so much for we love doing this. So see you guys next week.
Yeah. See you, everybody.